In the July-August 2012 issue of The Atlantic, Anne-Marie Slaughter published her article, "Why Women Still Can't Have It All." After struggling between the demands of her family and the demands of her high-level position with the State Department, Slaughter left her job and wrote an article criticizing the systems which lead to women not having it all. While some say women can have it all, just not at the same time, Slaughter argues that in the current system, there's no way to have it all, a successful, respected professional career track while being a good mother. This article set off a firestorm of responses on both sides of the argument. Some said that Slaughter was assuming there was a choice which many women don't actually have. Some said that she was simply wrong. Others called her elitist, and so on and so on. As a working mother, you might imagine this article was of interest to me. I am the proud mother of a 16-month-old daughter. I am the proud wife of the other Rabbi Lapidus, and I am a proud rabbi here at the temple. These are all things which are important to me, yet every day is a constant struggle to balance the needs of my family with the needs of our congregation. I will say honestly in this season of repentance that since my daughter's arrival, I have often felt guilt and tension between the two loves of my life, family and work. When I drop Hadara off at daycare, I believe with all of my heart that she is going to learn more and have more fun there than she would at home with me. And then I come to this temple believing in the sacred work we do. And at the end of every day, I ask myself if I have done right by my family and by my work. Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is a resounding no. Someone lost out that day. If this were a struggle that is mine alone, it would not be the Yom Kippur sermon I offer to you this year. However, I have spoken with many of you about this tension. Grandparents and parents, those who dealt with this in the height of the feminist movement and those who deal with it now, I have yet to find a mother who feels she is or was in perfect balance, let alone had it all. And it's not unique to mothers or parents. I would suggest that all of us are wrestling constantly with competing forces in our lives. We are needed by our families and our friends, our workplaces and our volunteer organizations. There is never enough time. We are running. We are hanging on by our fingernails. We are going through the blur of the year with little time to pause. We are chasing it all. I would suggest that Anne-Marie Slaughter and others are asking the wrong question. It isn't about having it all. Life actually doesn't work like that. Instead, I would offer that we need to reframe the question. Are we using the right measurements for our lives? And fundamentally, are we living lives of meaning? The minute we ask ourselves to think of our lives in terms of meaning, to measure in less tangible but intensely personal ways, we are no longer measuring in terms of guilt, regret, or that sense of helplessness which comes from rushing every which way. All of us, no matter our age or responsibilities, can seek to live a life of meaning. Today, in case you hadn't noticed, is Yom Kippur. It is a day of measuring, of judging, and of weighing our deeds. We confess a list of communal sins and think about which ones we actually committed and those we managed to avoid this year. However, Yom Kippur needs to be more than a checklist. If we only go through the list of al-chaitz and say, yes, I've avoided 90% of these, give me an A, we have not truly asked ourselves the difficult questions. Have we lived up to the best in ourselves and done right by those who depend upon us? Have we had a year of meaning where we held the fullness of each day in our hands? Or do we sit here with regret for time lost? If we look at our society, we often measure our success through numbers. Wealth, the size of our house, and the quality of our car tells people of our professional success. Bonuses and paychecks tell people how they are valued within an organization. Being in a committed relationship and having children is a sign of relationship success. So those who are single or who cannot conceive a baby often feel they have failed by the measurements of our general society. And then there is the schedule, what Anne-Marie Slaughter calls the time macho attitude. The sense that the more time you spend at work, the more time you spend running kids around, the more you can say, I'm so busy, the more important and meaningful your life is. Technology has added to this time drain. A July 2012 survey showed that more than 80% of people will continue working for an average of 7 extra hours per week, courtesy of technology. 68% of us will check our work email before 8 a.m., 50% of us will check our email while still in bed, and yes, we know who we are, and 69% of us will not go to sleep without checking our work email. Clayton Christensen, a professor at Harvard Business School and author of How Will You Measure Your Life, says it's easy to focus on being satisfied with the trappings of success. Instead, we can be motivated in different ways, asking, is this meaningful to me? Is this helping me to develop as a professional or as a person? Christensen suggests that in creating a life of meaning, we must begin with the first step of understanding our likeness, thinking in honest, deep terms about the person we want to be. We need to identify our values, the things which make us who we are. We have to think beyond the superficial trappings and identify ourselves from the inside out. Judaism has always agreed that we need to be identifying and measuring from the inside outward. Pirkei Avot teaches, who is rich? He who is satisfied with his portion. We are each wealthy when we are happy in what we have, aware of our blessings, able to appreciate what we have even if we choose to compare it to others. There is a teaching from Rabbi Zusia, a Hasidic rabbi, who said, in the world to come, they will not ask me why you were not Moses. They will ask me why you were not Zusia. Judaism measures us against ourselves. Did we live up to the best of our potential? Were we true to who we are and who we were capable of becoming? The reality is that if we only measure in the superficial, in the numbers and the appearances, we lose sight of the core of our being. Instead of measuring life simply in checklists and checkbooks and against the unattainable standard of having and doing it all, we can measure who we are against who we are capable of being. We can ask ourselves questions of meaning. This is not an ideal which can wait till next year, because time is going by faster than we can believe and meaning will not happen automatically. But let's take a moment and talk about time. The simple truth is that it's limited. In his book, No Regrets Parenting, Dr. Harley Rothbart reminds us that there are 940 weekends from the birth of a child to his or her 18th birthday. 940 weekends. That's only 940 weeks. When we think about this as the sum total of 18 years of life at any age, it is terrifyingly finite. And that clock is ticking week after week. My daughter Hadara is almost 17 months old. That means we have only 867 weeks left before she is 18 years old and off to do any number of things, and she can't even speak in full sentences yet. For those who have bar bat mitzvah students, there are only 284 weeks from their 13th birthday until their 18th. So when people say to me, many here in this room, you know, Hadar is going to be off to college before you know it, my response is almost always a serious, yes, I know. As a parent, 18 is the moment when our children are invited and able to chart their own course. At that moment, they aren't ours in the same way. Our responsibilities and our opportunities will have changed. When I come home from a day at work which has been tremendously fulfilling but means I have missed seeing my daughter all day, that is one day I do not get back to spend with her. But at least I feel good that it was one day contributed meaningfully to the sacred work here. How challenging it is then when there are days when we feel the time we want to spend on meaningful people or endeavors is being drained away in things that don't matter or do not provide meaning. This is not just for parents. We know as human beings that time is flying. Yom Kippur is a time when we recognize our mortality and try to become in tune with it for a day. We abstain from the things which make us feel alive, food and drink, sex, perfumes, and showering. And we read Unatana Tokef, the prayer which asks, who shall live and who shall die? This reminds us that whether we take this poem literally or not, our time is uncertain, limited, and precious. As such, we should emerge from Yom Kippur renewed and refreshed, but not complacent. There's the exercise of the burning house. If your house were on fire, who and what would you try to save? I believe we would all agree that our family and friends come first, then pets, and then we engage in the personal realization of what is really important. I rarely hear of anyone talking of trying to save clothes or pay stubs, but I often hear about saving irreplaceable heirlooms, journals, and photographs. Even at the youngest ages, we recognize that when we reach a moment of decision, there are so many things which suddenly become unimportant, even if they seemed so critical just a moment ago. The same question can be applied to our lives. Unatana Tokef and Yom Kippur say to us, this could be the year the fire starts. This could be the year we go to a movie and some madman walks in with a gun. This could be the year a driver texts instead of stopping at a red light. This could be the year our annual physical ends with, well, let's do some more tests. In those moments, I think we all know that clarity of what truly matters would come, unfortunately, at a painful price. This year, the fire may not be a tragedy. This may be the year that a child graduates or gets married. Perhaps a new baby will be arriving in the family. Maybe a new job or new endeavor is on the horizon. There is still the unknown and still the question of what truly matters. For it is in the moment of extremes, the most awful of tragedies and the most joyous of blessings, when we feel the divine presence and face the question of what does this mean? We each face a choice: to coast through the little time we have, or to intentionally commit ourselves to living a life of meaning, to measure in terms of what is true and what matters for us, rather than measuring according to the trappings of society. And I'm not saying those things don't matter at all, but what I am saying is that when the house is on fire, when we taste a sense that nothing is permanent or certain, what will really, truly be of meaning? And what will be time and energy and emotion wasted? So why wait for the fire? Time is going by, and we can start making meaning now. Bachya ibn Pekuda wrote, "Days are like scrolls, write on them only what you remembered." I have a journal for Hadara that is a one line a day. I'm really not a journal person, but this I seem to be able to do. It is interesting to choose that one line each night, knowing this is all I'm likely to remember from the day in the years to come. Each of us could do that for our own lives. When we come to the end of a day, what would we write down as most important, knowing that years from now we may only remember that one thing as the rest fades away? It's time to find the best way to measure whether we have enough, whether we are doing enough, whether we are living lives of meaning. Clayton Christensen suggests that once we've figured out our likeness, who we truly want to be, that we then have to focus on our commitment to that idea and allocate our resources accordingly. Each of us faces the question of allocation every day. Do we take the hour for exercise or go in early to work? Do we spend $2 on coffee or do we save it? Do we take time to go to a class at Temple or to have dinner with friends or to sit on our couch? I would suggest that living a life of meaning is not about perfection, but about making choices with integrity. We also have to avoid that trap of marginal thinking. Just this once will be okay, which can slide into a habitual pattern. While sometimes we are truly able to make it just once, it often happens that after we allocate differently from our priorities a few times with little consequence, we will start to do it more frequently. Take, for example, the person who schedules a date and then is asked to stay late by his boss. He cancels once, his date understands, and then it happens again. And the first time was okay, so maybe his date will be understanding again. And before you know it, the date isn't around anymore. We cannot take for granted that our family and friends will continue to understand as we say they are important, but allocate our time in ways that say differently. At the same time, we also cannot take for granted that our work colleagues will continue to be understanding as we say that work is a priority, but continually fail to meet our responsibilities. There is a fine balance, one that is maintained best by allocating with integrity and honesty. When we are upfront with those around us about how we are allocating our time, especially when it's different from our core values, we keep ourselves from sliding into new patterns. Jewishly speaking, I think there are two ways we can start to create a sense of meaning. First, let's make sure we aren't bringing the time macho mentality into our spiritual lives and be certain that our day and our week actually ends. Technology makes it so tempting to check our emails when we are away from work, and there are many times we have to. But are we sure that at some point we put the phone down, stop working, and end the day, rather than allow the days to blend together? And are we making sure that our week ends too? Shabbat is a ready-made alarm which invites us to take a pause. Whether we come to services or go for a walk, take a break from the phone or email, make a nice dinner with friends, read a book, or take a quiet moment for prayer, Shabbat should feel different in some way. And I know we say over and over from this bima that Shabbat is the solution, but it truly can be if we remember two things. First, we shouldn't set the bar too high. And second, Shabbat shouldn't feel like work. It just needs to start by feeling like something different. I won't pretend that I don't struggle with it too, the challenge of ending the week and making sure there is Shabbat in my life. Because the pull to do the everyday on Shabbat is very strong, but trying to avoid the marginal thinking mentality is important to create moments of lasting meaning and rest. Rituals also help us to frame a sense of meaning, and they are possible anytime. Rituals don't have to take place in the synagogue or be exclusively Jewish. When we come home from our daily work or school, and I include everyone in this regardless of what you do during the day, how do we ritually enter into a different space? Do we take off our shoes, change our clothes, wash our hands, kiss our loved ones, feed our dog, set aside our phone? This is a ritual. Sitting down for a meal at a table, whether or not we say motzi, whether or not we ask people to share something from their day, or whether or not we eat anything other than takeout, is also a ritual. How we transition into different space helps to end our day and helps us to see that we are now allocating our time and energy differently. It's also a way that we signal to those who are waiting for us and ourselves that we are present in a way we weren't before. The reality is that living a life of meaning is not something that just happens, and it is not always easy. We can figure out our likeness, who we want to be, and put our values into a hierarchy. But each day, while the hierarchy is static, the priorities and allocations may change. When we do this with intention and integrity, thinking about the consequences of our choices, we are living a life of meaning. For having a life of meaning is not about doing whatever we want all of the time or having it all. It is about knowing where our time is going and feeling confident that we are spending that time with a sense of values and honesty. The world is an uncertain place. No matter how much we prepare, how much insurance we buy, or how many canned goods are in our pantry, we cannot control so much of what may happen in our lives. Every Yom Kippur, we are reminded that time is uncertain too. We pray that we will live long, full, happy lives of health and blessing while we strive to live each day as though our time is limited. In a moment, we will turn to our Yom Kippur Torah reading, which reminds us to uvacharta b'chaim, to choose life. Choosing life is not just about opening our eyes each morning, but about going to sleep each night with the knowledge we have lived the day fully the best we can. So let's take these words to heart this year. Let's be intentional each day choosing life and meaning. May this year be one in which we live each day with fullness, going to sleep each night with the comfort that we do not have it all, but we have meaning in what we have and how we live. Amen.